It's noon, straight up noon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Southern Utah Grad and Online um, Friday Career Connection. This is a chance for us to get together on Friday afternoons and hear from successful SUU alums and others about their career journey. It's a chance for our online students to really hear from experts and learn from them and as they've developed successful careers. So my name is Tad Rinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad and Online. We're glad to have you here. Our guest today is Daril Magleby, and Daril and I have known each other for many, many years. We went to SUU together. Daril's a few years ahead of me, but um, it's been fun to track Daril's career, successful entrepreneurship career over the years. And thank goodness for Facebook that allows us to do that. So just before we get started, I'd love to have you put in the chat where you're calling in from, what part of the U.S. I think many are from Cedar, but if you'll just put in the chat where you're, the city and the state uh, where you're currently located. Want to get a fill. I'm in Cedar. Someone from Las Vegas. Oh, we have a few people from Cedar. Oh, Richmond, Virginia. Wow. That's fantastic. Enoch, Cedar City, Enoch. Oh, if you're a Grimshaw, you got to be from Enoch. Someone from Scarborough, Maine. Wow. Maine and Virginia. Salt Lake. That's great. That's great. All right. Well, let's dig right in. We're going to ask Daril to share his career journey from SUU student to successful serial entrepreneur. Our theme today will be serial entrepreneurship, but we can dig into other areas as well. So we're excited to hear from you, Daril, and your career journey up to this point. There's much more ahead, I'm sure, but we'd love to hear about what's happened in the past.
Okay. Well, I had the privilege to go to Southern Utah State College and then eventually Southern Utah University and met Tad and Stacy and many others there and had a great experience and got involved in student government. I got a degree in communications, public relations, advertising, and a marketing minor. Um, I remember graduating with that paper in my hand and thinking, now what do I do? I really never had a vision of what I wanted to accomplish and do in life. I didn't really know what that meant for me. But my wife and I felt impressed to move to Utah County up here in Provo-Orem. And I was able to find employment with a company called Soft Copy, which was a sister company to WordPerfect Corporation. We manufactured all their products for this very large growing company. And our company grew. We grew from, I was 150th employee, and we had over 1,200 when the company was kind of dissected back in 1993 or 94. Um, there was a point when I was at that company where they asked me to use my marketing abilities to keep the label printing presses busy when WordPerfect wasn't doing a release of their product. So I went out in the community and solicited label printing jobs from companies, and my very first one was Cara Chocolates, and New Skin International became one of my largest accounts. And so here's this software manufacturing company that's doing all these side businesses to keep the employees busy and the press is operating. At one point, I learned that soft copy was going to be sold, so I chose to have an exit plan to start my own label printing business. And the people that were acquiring soft copy learned about that and asked if they could be a partner with me in that venture. They would sell me the equipment and let me take the employees. And so we rolled out a new label printing company called Label Express. And the reason we identified that as an express in our title is that we learned that most companies didn't get their labels when they wanted them. They had to wait for weeks at a time. And if you know, like a multi-level marketing company like New Skin, they can't wait. They need it right now, and price does not matter. And so we really focused on taking care of the customer and getting them their products when they needed it. And we priced it accordingly. We had an internal model that when in doubt, mark up. because it wasn't a price situation. It was they needed service and they wanted to be taken care of. And so we grew substantially over the course of 1993 to 1998. I think our first year of sales was $1 million. Then we went to three, then six, then 12, then close to 20. And in 1998, we sold that company to an organization out of Chicago and California. And we had a 3-year non-compete. At the time, I probably would have signed a 10-year or 20-year non-compete because I wasn't going to get it back into this business again. It's very expensive to do. It probably would have cost $3 or $4 million to start that company again. But we sold in 1998. We had over 110 employees. We serviced 1,300 clients. We averaged about 20 million in sales a year. With very, very profitable company. We were probably averaging between 300 and 400 grand profit per month. And so our banks were on board with us to, buy new equipment and really take care of us so we could grow and establish. And we had a lot of success. And I believe that was attributed not necessarily to luck. It was this, we desired to serve our customer. What do you need? And we took care of it. And because of that, many, many highly successful companies came to us. We had a saying that success breeds success. So if you follow someone that's very successful, a company like New Skin or others, if you take care of them, you're going to have success as well. And so we were born out of that opportunity to be highly successful. At the end of 1998, I told my wife, Dana, who was from Cedar City, she was a Giles. She worked for Bill Kringland at a pizza factory, and we loved him. He actually sang at our wedding reception in Cedar, and I called him and asked if we could be a partner in a pizza company. And he says, well, I'm struggling with cancer. So why don't you call my partner, Bill Randall in St. George, and see if he has interest. And so over a course of about a year and a half or so, we established a partnership. It wasn't a franchise, it was a partnership. They became a 30% owner. And we established our first store in Provo. And then we went to Linden and Spanish Fork. And then we went to Bountiful and then Logan. And we had 6 locations. And currently I have 3 of those locations operational, one in Spanish Fork, one in Linden, and one in Syracuse that are still operational. Our Provo location we shut down because we sold the building to a lady that needed it for an esthetician college. And so she paid us a large amount of money for the building. It was a 3.5-story building, and she wanted that location to have her college there. So we shut that location down about 5 years ago. One thing we learned in Pizza Factory is it was well known in Cedar City and St. George, and we were highly successful for many, many years up here in Utah Valley and other locations. And as we learned, that any business, you've got to maintain and watch bottom line and quality. It's hard when every day you wake up, you've got to make the same thing over and over. And so it's a difficult business. And if anybody were to ask, should I start a restaurant? I'd probably advise them not to, because it's probably one of the most unsuccessful things you can do. Most restaurants fail within the first year or two, unless they're a franchise and they've been vetted and proven over the course of time. But we still have our 3 locations. We're still highly successful. We have, 50, 60 employees at each of those locations. I chose not to be involved on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to kind of still pursue other entrepreneurial opportunities. And so each of our general managers are a 20% partner, and they manage the day-to-day operations and take care of it for me and for my other partners. And so I enjoy eating there for free, and I enjoy inviting my friends who come to Utah Valley to come and participate with me in a meal. It's been fun in that regard. So there is some joy in the restaurant business but it is highly uh, competitive. It's the margins are very slim. Um, as I mentioned earlier, my 3-year non-compete was expiring, and one of my employees that went with the company that bought us approached me and asked if I would fly to Chicago with him to look at some new printing technology. And so I did, and we, within about a year or so, took over the building that we never sold to this label operation and started a competitive label company because they weren't taking care of customers, they weren't taking care of the needs of New Skin and others, and they were going all over the country to get their products. And so we started a company called Flexible Technologies, or short for Flex Tech. And we started with about a dozen employees, and we grew and grew, and eventually we became the largest label manufacturer in Utah and likely in the Western United States. We again focused on our customer and quality and turnaround, and we were highly successful again. We enjoyed that. Was involved in that for a few years, but eventually I sold my interest, and the company has been sold again. So part of my interest in entrepreneurism is acquiring or starting up a company and then eventually finding an exit strategy. Pizza Factory has been enjoyable. I've been doing it for 27 years. And so at my age, I'm thinking I might want to exit that business at some point just to do something different. About 15 years ago, I was invited to participate in a company that was a knee rehabilitation company. It was a machine that you get on after you've had your knees replaced or that have been injured, and it helps give you the extension and the flexion that you need to get your knees moving correctly. And so for the last 15 years, I've been involved in that company. It's called Flex Tech. I'm sorry, it's called Therapies. Therapy with ease, so it's a play on words. Therapies. If you were to look it up online, therapies.com, you would see our equipment. We sell those devices to professionals, hospitals, physical uh, therapists. We've sold them to like the U.S. ski team, professional football teams throughout the country, and it helps injuries to be recovered much quicker. And they're highly successful, and they're about an $8,000 piece of equipment. And we're just hoping that someday we'll get hundreds and hundreds of these sold in a given year. Right now, we're probably doing about $1 million in sales per year, and we're just inking this, making it day to day. It's a highly successful product. It's got a patent, but it's just not making the money that we need to. But it is an entrepreneurial effort that I've invested in and participate in on a monthly basis. Currently, I have the 3 pizza factories and then the knee rehabilitation company. And as I look back on my career over the last 30 some years, I probably would dare bet that my success came from luck. I think I have a good head on my shoulders in that regard of identifying things that might be successful. But I think having success is a good part of what most businesses have. They have success because they're lucky. Um, and when you're given an opportunity to take advantage of it and move forward, then you can make something very successful out of it. I also believe that my personality allows me to connect with people, and those relationships are important to me. Many of those people that worked at New Skin and those 1,300 clients over throughout the country and the world, they're friends of mine to this day, and I care about them. And they knew that, and they knew I'd take care of them. So if you have those desires to help and serve and foster those relationships, I think your business can be successful um, with the luck that you get on a day-to-day basis. There's been a few things that I've done in my career that have not been successful. I started my own restaurant, and it was called Tropics Grill, and it was operational for about 9 months. I lost $300,000 doing that venture. And as I look back on it, I can identify where we made a few mistakes. And part of that was the menu. It was just too expensive. We had placed it in a bedroom community, and the price point was too high, and people just couldn't afford to come there on a regular basis. So we shuttered the doors, and that's where I put my second pizza factory. And so as I look back on my career, I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had, for the insight that I've gained from my career, from my education at Southern Utah University, for those associations. And I'm grateful that I could raise a family of 4 children with my wife. There was one point where, when I was trying to build my label company, that I was never at home in the mornings or at night when my daughter was getting up or going to bed. And I remember one morning, for whatever reason, I was home, and she came to me and gave me a hug, and I was putting my shoes on. She got emotional and said, "Where are you going, Dad?" And I said, "I'm going to work." And she says, "Why do you always have to go to work?" I says, "I have to make money for my family so I can feed you." And she started to cry, and she said, "Dad, don't go to work. I won't eat anymore." And so I remember going to my highly successful label company and realizing that I needed to make some changes. I needed to be more present for my family. And so that's when I hired more people and trained them. At one point, I kind of felt that maybe no one could do it like I could do it, or as good as I could do it. But I trusted in others, and I put them in place to help my company continue to grow. But then I could be more balanced to be with my family more often. And that's something I've learned from a little 4-year-old girl who's now 36. She's also an SAU graduate. So
Wow, that's
that's
great.
my
I love
story.
that. I love that story. Quite the ride. It's interesting that all your businesses are in different areas, therapeutic, food,
Yeah.
technology. How did we've got a question come in, but I'm going to preface that question. How did was it a strategic decision to work in those industries, or was it just you were the right place at the right time? And then we have a question to follow up with that is how do you know when the right time is it to exit that opportunity? What's your strategic thinking for both selecting and exiting an opportunity?
The label company it just happened by my working for another company. So I was able to see the opportunity and then build upon that. Um, the pizza restaurant was never something I desired to do, but we knew Bill Kringland, so it was an easy ask. I knew that it was successful in St. George and Cedar City, so it made sense that it would be successful up here. And so, with their expertise and their training us and helping us, we were able to be successful in that. The the knee rehabilitation company was just a friend that was introduced to the technology, and the company was running out of money, and they needed an infusion of cash to continue to move forward. So that was just an opportunity that was presented, not an interest. I thought it'd be a 2 or 3 year highly successful venture, but it's been close to 15 now. Still worth some money because of the patent and the technology, but it's taken much longer than I thought, and a little bit more money than we thought. But it was an opportunity that was presented. And as an entrepreneur, when you start making money, you have others that are associations and friends that present ideas to you, and you have to make a decision if that's something you want to support. And there's been a few things that I've supported, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, that that I've invested in that hasn't necessarily presented anything to me substantial. But that's what an entrepreneur does. He doesn't seem to be content with what they're doing. They always are thinking of the next opportunity. I can't drive down the street and see an empty lot without thinking what could go there or what business needs to be in the community. That's just part of how I'm wired. And so I tell people when I've taught at BYU or UVU and entrepreneurial lecture series that you first have to have that wiring. You first have to have an interest in having faith to invest money and see where it goes. If not, it's probably something that you're not able to palate because you're afraid of failure. But if you desire something more than what you currently have and you have the faith to move forward, then you can be successful. You're not always going to be, but you can.
So you learn how to manage the risk, it sounds like. I mean, you're a very confident person, and from when I've known you, yeah, you're not afraid to take a chance. I think it's a calculated risk,
Yes,
but
it
you're not
is.
afraid.
At my age, I'm 63 now. I'm not as ambitious because I need to rely upon what I've gained over the years. I don't want to put it at risk. I want to live the comfortable life that I've lived over the last 30 some years. And so I limit what I pursue and plus I have enjoyed serving more than building a business. My religion has greatly blessed me with opportunities to serve and bless people. There's not a greater joy than that. Doesn't pay anything, at least in this life it doesn't. But I love serving and being involved. So my success in business has allowed me to be free with my time to serve in responsibilities that have been very taxing for me over the years.
Yeah. I love that you're giving back. I wish more people would do that. Darryl, we do have a question about therapies, about the growth. What do you see as the growth for therapies? Do you see more outlets, more therapist recommendations? And I'm curious if I'm going to add my question to this one. Do you manufacture overseas? And
No,
oh, you don't? Everything's done here in the States?
we build all of our machines in Springville, Utah. We have two people that are hired to do that. We sell 5 to 10 a month, probably on average. We're hoping to get some of these big physical facilities to buy 2 or 300, and then we would probably consider going overseas. They're very heavy. A lot of the parts come from China and other places, but we assemble and do all the welding and everything here in the United States. The the opportunity for the company is to be a 3 or 400 million dollar company based on how many locations and places that these um, pieces of equipment can be placed. We're probably worth 5 million is all at this point. And so the up the opportunity is very present and we're excited about it, but we're just a little exhausted from the fight to become that big of a company.
Yeah. Do you think you'll keep pushing, or do you think at
Yeah.
some point you'll say this is good enough and exit?
Um, we have to make a decision in the next year or two if we want to dump a 500,000 to $1 million into it for marketing and other things. That's me and my main partner have the money to do that. We just have to make the decision that do we want to do that and put that money at risk. We
Yeah.
might find an exit strategy where a bigger company that sells hundreds of other products for the medical industry might just acquire us. And that's probably a more likely scenario.
Okay. Interesting.
It's a great
Well,
product. I've used it myself. I've had some injuries and surgeries, and so I have a machine here in my home that I use, and it's a great product.
yeah, just gotta find more customers, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Um, Talk to us about franchising. So some people, when they decide to become an entrepreneur, they think franchising is the way to go. And there's a lot of advertisements for becoming involved in franchises. What's your opinion on becoming an entrepreneur through franchising?
Um, First of all, if you're going to do franchise, if you're going to acquire a franchise, let's say McDonald's, um, that's an entrepreneurial effort because you're putting forth the effort to start a business. It's it's already planned and successful, and you will be successful. The challenge is you have to have $1.5 million or so dollars worth of net worth in order for McDonald's to even allow you to be a franchise. Um, I have several friends that Costa Vida. He's my stake president, lives in my neighborhood. He owns Costa Vida. Neaters is in my neighborhood. I've watched them develop and go to a franchise. They've acquired all of their stores back now. Um, Bajio was also a neighborhood that was acquired by Costa Vida years back. I think you can be successful. I think you can start a business. It doesn't have to be a restaurant. And then you can franchise it, but it has to be highly successful and it has to be proven. And you have to have three or four or 10 of them in order for you to probably franchise those. And but acquiring a franchise of something that's new and innovative is a good idea if you have the resources to back it and support it. Um, I look at those on occasion, and back in the day, I was going to do some um, ice cream franchises and just decided it was more of a nuisance than it was going to be enjoyable. So I chose not to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. I mean,
franchising is great. People have already done it. They've done the homework. They've put forth the effort. Now they're selling a franchise and they'll support you and help you. And we did that with, there's a few up here. There are Fat Cats bowling centers. We had some pizza factories in a couple of those. And then the people that own those started the Costa Vitas and decided, well, let's just put our Costa Vitas in instead of paying Daril a franchise fee every month. And it made sense. So we tried
yeah.
it a couple times, and you know, I wonder why we didn't franchise our pizza factories 25, 30 years ago, but we just never did.
Yeah. So talk about, I know some people are, are focused on entrepreneurship through acquisition. What do you think about that method for those people who want to be entrepreneurs, buying an existing business and trying and keeping it going?
I think it could be highly successful, especially if you have the drive. Um, I- my pizza factories, honestly, I think they could be acquired by somebody that has passion and they could make it way more successful than it is. I just don't have the interest or time to do that. But yes, if they identify a location that's a franchise, taking over a business that someone's retiring, it's a great idea. You just got to know you're owned by it.
Yeah.
It's you just you know if you want to be an entrepreneur, don't think that you got more time. I mean, I used to go golfing 2 or 3 times a week when I worked for Soft Copy. The minute I started Label Express, I never went golfing again because I was too busy.
Yeah.
And now I've lost the interest. So,
Yeah.
so yes, there's a highly great opportunity to acquire an existing business and make it your own and move forward.
Yeah. Great. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we are going to ask you to put something in the chat. And this is the question. Have you ever thought about starting your own business? And if so, what kind of business did you want to start? And I'm going to tell you what I thought about doing. I lived in Japan for a number of years and I came back and I wanted to start a ramen shop because I love Japanese ramen. And I reached out to a ramen company that in New York and they said, sorry, we're not doing franchises. So I
Mm.
kind of gave that up. So put in the chat what, if you've ever thought about starting a business, and if so, what was it? And then while you're doing that, Darryl, we've had one question coming in. What was some of the best entrepreneurial opportunities available today that you've seen? And then the other question uh, is the pizza competition too high? How do you keep up with pricing to stay competitive? So we'll get back to that. So,
Okay.
okay, here's some of the things people thought about doing: becoming a travel writer, publishing, a skincare product business, develop a protein cold foam for daily use. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Really interesting. Anybody else? Suzette, what's your entrepreneurial idea?
Well, so I was had small business as my minor back in the day, just because I was taking so many night classes. And one of the things that we did, Swanson was our teacher, and he was Harry Swanson.
I loved
And one of
him.
the things that we had to do in our entrepreneurship class was to sell cremation in Utah back in the 90s. And me and my two partners in our group presentation came up with the idea of porcelain temples and to be the container instead of an urn to have your temple. And then as more people died, that you could increase the size of your temple, and that was before there were really porcelain temples
That's
around.
funny.
And we tried to sell that. I did tell Dwayne Lamoureux and his son-in-law Russ Atkin, who owned Serenity Funeral down in St. George, about it, and Dwayne thought it was a good idea, but I don't know
That's
that
great.
that's ever really
Ever take it off?
happened.
I have to make a comment about Harry Swanson. When I was in his class, he was going to go Australia or somewhere for the summer, and he had started the Depot Mall. It's the old train station there in Cedar. And I had a little studio in there where I did old-fashioned photography, the sepia toned, and I had things for sale in there. And he asked me to manage that Depot Mall for him while he was gone. And I lived in his home and took care of his little dog, Zelda, during that time. So that was an entrepreneurial thing I had going when I was at SUU.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great ways to just get started. A couple of other ideas people have put in here: a holding company for smaller companies to keep them going when people want to exit, and a company I'm attempting now based on my books. That's from Jonathan Early. Affiliate marketing, e-commerce, drop shipping, a workplace health and safety consulting and training business, helping other businesses become OSHA compliant. That'd be interesting. On a roll, cinnamon rolls and other treats and Parowan. Amy, is that something you've actually launched, or is that just an idea? I'm gonna embarrass her and ask her to come off mute because I love that name.
Yeah, we're still waiting. I live in Heroin, and we're still waiting to find where the best cinnamon roll is.
Yes. And because I knew that that was part of the marketing campaign for the community, and we struggled to find places to get a cinnamon roll when we went there. On a roll actually would also be on wheels. So it's portable because Parowan has great traffic in some seasons, but it's something that you could take on the road for other events. So on a roll, and whatever was appropriate in the season, in addition to cinnamon rolls, because they can be made ahead. And the other one we wanted to do is called One Hot Cookie, which essentially we would have the cookies already made, warm them on site, and you could throw ice cream on them or not. So, and I thought it would be super cute to see my kids wearing shirts that said One Hot Cookie. They were not
I love
excited
it.
about it. The
Yeah,
teenagers, no.
that's creative. All
Anyway,
right.
those are some ideas for fun.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
I hope it takes off.
Well, it's harder when you have a spouse who's risk averse.
That's true.
Understand.
Yes,
That's true.
Start small
there you
and
go.
then see where your success is and then continue from there. You'll find success first and then take the next step
Yeah,
and
it's
then the
probably
next
easier
step
to sell when you have some success.
and then find
Yeah.
a distributor that will be willing to sell it for you. When I
There you
had the
go.
label printing business, I watched companies start with a small label order. One was there's a popcorn ball called, I can't remember what it's called now, but it was a small little company that grew to be millions and millions of dollars for a caramel ball. And I got to watch that company grow and flourish because of our purpose of helping them with labeling. So,
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that advice. Jared's looking at software licensing. Someone's looking at massage and rehab clinic. Sierra's husband is selling medical grade duct tape that is sold separately and in first aid kits, and that's up and launching. And I think Sierra, that came. Your father-in-law's a medical doctor, so that that came through. And then we have someone who's an SU employee that actually has their own business called the Dog Spot. That's hot dogs, and they go. I've seen them at the farmers market, so they're actually in the space. So all these are great ideas. Thanks everybody for sharing. So that leads me to my next question. So how do you identify trends? Um, and maybe you didn't on purpose, but I'm assuming that Sierra's husband's business for the medical grade duct tape was maybe something of a trend, or the massage and rehab clinics, or anything. How would you identify trends? Because I think being a successful entrepreneur, it's helpful if you're in the right place at the right time, which you were with the label making and the software boom in Utah Valley. What advice do you have for identifying those trends that will help increase your chance for success?
well, speaking of food is probably what we all think about when we see a new restaurant opening and it's successful in your community. That's what happened with Bajio was one of the very first fast food Mexican places. And it was Costa Vida then came in, and then there was a few others. Actually, Cafe Rio was one of the very first. So what happens is one comes into the market and is successful, and then you see two or three others that try to do the same thing. Um, and then, the best wins usually. Some of these are still around and doing well. Cafe Rio, Costa Vida are all doing well. Um, but as far as identifying what needs to be in our community as far as a restaurant, I've always thought a fast food Chinese restaurant that would compete against Panda Express would do very, very well, but at a little higher quality. I just don't have the energy to do it, but I think it could be highly successful um, in a lot of communities. But I don't necessarily, I sometimes I drive down the street and see something going in, and I've never heard of them before, and I research it, and it's quite impressive. But one thing I was told once is that if you come up with an idea, it's almost a guarantee that somebody else in the world's come up with that same idea. So it's not like it's new to you necessarily. It's just who's going to take action first and who's going to move forward on it. But there's a lot of little things you can buy on Amazon that are all um, brainchilds of somebody, and it can be a simple hot cookie or a cinnamon roll from a Parowan home that can be highly successful someday. Um,
Yeah.
it's just what desire and what passion do you have you want to put behind it.
Yeah. And I think that's where you've excelled, is the execution.
I learned
Um,
with the label company when I started that, like I said, no one was doing fast. So we figured out how to do fast turnaround, and that's why we were successful. We were printing pretty much the same thing as all these other printers in the Western United States, but they weren't doing it in 2 or 3 days. They were doing it in 2 or 3 weeks.
yeah.
And then we learned how to do things better and higher quality, and that's what our customers wanted. We wanted to separate ourselves from the junk labels of the world. We didn't want to do milk jug labels or cheese labels anymore. We wanted to do the foil stamped, very, very difficult things that you can charge accordingly for.
Yeah. So Daryl, let's pivot just a little bit to the human relation aspect because I'm sure you've hired a lot of people, you've managed a lot of people, and you've developed a very extensive network. What's the key to managing people well or hiring the right people to work in your businesses? Because I'm sure much of the success of the pizza factory is going to be attributed to that general manager that you've hired or that you partnered with. Talk to us about how you find the right people, how you manage them well, and then how you build your network.
Well, if you're going to start a business, you don't want a partner that's going to have the same skill set as you. I had one of my partners in the label business was highly skilled in taxes and accounting and those things. I had no clue how to do that. And to this day, I really don't have an understanding. So you have to make sure your partners have different skill sets. And then I've always used this phrase, it's teach people correct principles and let them govern themselves. You have to hire the very best. You need to teach them what you want to have accomplished and what's your vision. And then hopefully they can manage and take care of that based on your training and your ability to help them. And of course, at times you might have to fire based on performance, but I seldom did that. Most of my employees at the label company were like family. They weren't family, they were like family. I cared about them, I loved them. I went to the events that were important to them, and they knew I cared about them. And so they were willing to work hard for me and my business. And we reciprocated by giving great bonuses. Um, One of the most successful employees I ever had is Deidre Henderson, who's the lieutenant governor of the state of Utah. Her and her husband Gabe were a brand new married couple, and they worked for me. And they worked really hard and took care of me. And we reciprocated by great bonuses. And Deidre told me a few years ago that that was one of the greatest experiences I ever had as a newlywed is to work for your company. And it made me feel good. Somebody that's as successful as she is, that she knew that we cared about her and her husband, and we took care of them. So you have to toe the line with employees. You got to do your reviews of them and let them know where they're not performing if they aren't. But you need to reward and love and support all the time.
And that's worked for you. Tell us about your how you develop the right networks. It sounds like you live in a great neighborhood um, with successful people, but what other things have you done to build the kind of network that you've been able to go to for help or for assistance in any of your business ventures?
Mm. Well, in the restaurant business, all my neighbors that live around me, all their kids wanted employment at my pizza factory. And I'd always say, I'll give you a job, but you have to keep it. Just because you know me doesn't mean I'm going to keep you on till you bleed me dry. So I've given hundreds and hundreds of young men and college kids jobs at Pizza Factory, and they've had to keep their job. And so that network of being in a religious community that I'm in, that I know every single neighbor in my whole community because of service, I know who's the best to attract and pursue and give opportunities to. There's been many people that there was a girl that was working for, it was called Shape Right Concepts. It was a big multi-level marketing company. She was a buyer, and I just really liked her and her professionalism, and I hired her away from that company because I wanted her. She became one of my best employees. So I have a desire to, to pick the best, and sometimes you might be wrong in that, but there's a lot of good people out there, but you just got to figure out who's going to be your best opportunity.
Yeah, I think fit is so key. You're absolutely right. All right. Well, we've got just a couple of minutes left. I'd like to close as you reflect on your entrepreneurial career. What advice would you give to a young 22, 23, 24-year-old college student at SUU who thinks they want to be an entrepreneur? What would you tell them based on all the things you've learned over the last 30 years about what that entails?
Um, Make sure that it's what you think about every single day. Make sure that you're wired for it. Um, be patient. Wait for the opportunity. I mean, I worked 5 years for a company before my first opportunity really was successful. Know that I've heard this statistic before that you'll likely have one home run in 12. So you might have to start 12 businesses to get a home run. I was very blessed to have a home run the first time with my label company. And that allowed me to do more and more things because I had the resource, financial resource to do it. Um, just be aware that if you want to pursue that, you've got to hire the right people or have the right partners with different skill sets. You have to probably do a lot of research and determine if that's something that's viable in your community. Um, you've got to be willing to get a loan or take debt out on your home or go without for a while based on the investment that's needed for your business. And then do you have the stomach to lose it all? Um, and it's okay if you don't. It's okay to start small, like we talked about the cinnamon roll and cookie concept. It's okay to start small. You don't have to be big overnight, and you can do it without putting all those resources at risk. Start small, start in your garage, and then don't ever buy the nice expensive car because you got to look successful. You don't need to be in a big high rent district building. Start small, do it smart, ask for advice, talk to entrepreneurs that's done it. Um, you've got to have a good bank. You've got to have a good financial advisor. You've got to have a good accountant in place if you don't know how to do that, and trust in them.
Yeah. That's great advice. That's great advice. And congratulations on all your success. Like I said, it's been fun to kind of watch your career and all the success you've had as an SU alum. So, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for your time today. I did talk to Daril earlier, and he said he's not much for LinkedIn, but he is on Facebook. So if you want to connect with him on Facebook, you'll find him there. If you are on LinkedIn, be sure and follow our Grad and Online page. We do a drawing every month for those who follow us, and we pick two people to win some SUU swag. So if you're not joined that group yet, please do. We'd love to have you be part of our community. Uh, our guest next week is Michael Anderson. I think Daril knows Michael.
I do.
Michael is the president of the Chicago History Museum in Chicago, of all places. So it'll be fun to hear from him. And the theme next week is going to be nonprofit management. Daril is definitely for profit, but Mike has worked in the nonprofit sector, so it'll be fun to hear from him. He's an SUU alum as well, and it's done really well in the arts and in museum management space. So please join us next Friday at noon to hear from Michael Anderson. Daril, thank you again. All the best to you, and congratulations on being a successful human and a successful entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Have a good
Anyone
week.
that wants to reach out, you're welcome to. I'm happy to help and answer questions and have dialogue with you if you need.
All right. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you.
Tell your wife she's a
I will.
gem.
She
All
is.
right. See you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Suzette, thanks for being here.